ago, you'd have found me locked in a giant biosphere with 7 other people for 2 years and 20 minutes. Well, a year ago, you'd have found me at it again. So this time, it was a little tiny biosphere in England, and you'd have found me in there with 4 teenagers and a camera crew. So this was for Jamie Oliver's show, Dream School, and his idea was that he was going to take 20 high school dropouts and see if he could really ignite a yearning for learning in these kids. And so he put them through all kinds of crazy experiences, and one of them was to be locked with this insane English woman, Jane, inside a biosphere. Well, I leave it up to your imagination as to what happened during the 48 hours that we were sealed in there. Needless to say, it was an incredible experience, and I think many of the kids that went through that whole experience with Jamie and the other 20 teachers that were involved really got an extraordinary thing out of it. And in fact, they even talked to some members of Parliament and talked about, my goodness, if I'd only known that the world could be so incredible and there were so many opportunities out there for me, I may have actually paid more attention in school. So one of them was Danielle, and she was one of the kids locked inside with me, and she actually went on after that experience and won a position in the National Youth Theatre, and then actually was really cool. She got a role in a major TV show in England, which I think is awesome. And so when I think about school, I myself don't necessarily have the best ideas about it. I happened to go to boarding school, and so I was incarcerated, and I couldn't leave. But if I hadn't have been, I most certainly would have been one of those statistics up there. So I want to take a little informal poll. How many of you absolutely loved school? Now, come on, be honest. Wow, it's actually fewer than I thought it was going to be. There really aren't many of you out there. Well, you're in a lot of good company. That statistic up there that you can see, that means that during the time that we are in this room together this evening, more kids will have dropped out of school than there are people in this room. That's pretty astounding. So I'm not really going to go into the other 2 stats that you see in there. I think we all know why our kids need to learn to read. I think we all know why science is so important. So I truly believe, though, that every child, given the right environment, can really be a positive agent for change in our society and in their own lives. And I'm now involved in a program called Champions for Change that is attempting to do just that. Take what we know about learning and get kids a yearning for learning. So how do we get change? What is change? This evening's about change. So let's just explore change a moment. So I don't know if you ever tried to be on a diet. Most of us have tried to be on a diet. I know I have, on and off my entire life. So what do you have to do to be on a diet? Well, first of all, it takes people around you. If everyone around you is eating badly, it's going to be really hard for you. Right? We all know that. If people are stuffing down donuts next to you, you are not going to resist those donuts very easily. You also have to know what it takes to lose weight. You need to know with every part of your being. Learning isn't just about what's in our heads. Learning is about understanding, and it's about motivation. It's about heart. And of course, ultimately, you want action. You want to actually do something about it. Well, that really is how you get change. If you look at any change movement that's ever happened, you will find a combination of more people with learning, understanding, and heart with action. Champions for Change is about getting that within our schools. So, here's a radical idea. How about starting out with a subject that really gets you going, gets your juices flowing? So we are taking sports to teach kids language, arts, and science. Indeed, my friends, it sounds completely bizarre, but Kids love sports. Who doesn't love sports? So why wouldn't you want to read about the antics of Shaun White and his snowboard? Or what about, now this guy, yes, he really is standing in his Speedos on an iceberg, and in fact, he is about to dive into the North Pole and swim across the North Pole. So you're teaching the kids about the cryosphere. And who wouldn't want to learn about how clouds work with Marcos Diaz as he swims around Manhattan for his native country, the Dominican Republic? So these are all athletes that we get involved in the stories that we get the kids to read through this book, Champions for Change, that I wrote a couple of years ago. With the support of the United Nations Department of Public Information, we give everything away for free to these teachers. For heaven's sake, our schools can't afford anything. So how does this work? So the book itself uses the experiences, the life stories of really incredible athletes to tell them things like how carbon cycling works. So what little boy and little girl, for that matter, wouldn't want to hear about the carbon cycle from a female race car driver? Wow, I mean, imagine if I'd been at school reading about this stuff. I'd have been crazier than I already am. So there's the photographs that we have in this book also are by world-class photographers. I mean, think about it. We are all surrounded by incredible input of imagery all day long, and everything we see online a lot of it is very beautiful. Our textbooks need to compete with that kind of stuff. I gave a book to a principal the other day, and she picked up the book, she held it in her hand, and she flipped through it, and she said, you know what the kids are going to say when they get this? The first thing they're going to do is smell it, because they never get new books. They never get new books. That says something right there. So we tried this book out, first of all, at the UN. To kick off the program, we brought in a bunch of middle school and high school students and some of the athletes that are involved in the program. And of course, I expected them to be entranced by the athletes. What I was really delighted by was that every one of these kids got very excited about what the athletes are doing outside their chosen profession, because all of them are involved in their community. They're in some form of community activity. And many of the kids actually got involved with that. And so we then wanted to take that aspect of this engagement into the classroom. It's about teaching the entire child. You've got to engage people in their entire being. And so we rolled it out through a bunch of schools, and John Salcido here is one of the teachers that's working with us, an amazing teacher, and he's working with a lot of kids that would be some of those statistics you saw earlier if it wasn't for the fact that he is so dedicated to these kids. And these kids are doing extraordinary things in their classroom. He gets them doing things like water catchment projects. Now, community service, it's been shown to have an incredibly positive impact on these children's lives. And these are really at-risk kids. And it's really showing them, of course, not only that they can affect the environment around them, but there's some real brain science for it as well. It turns out that giving makes you feel good. So that's not a bad place to start. Now, another teacher, Betsy Wilkening, is doing some fabulous things with her kids, and these kids got so fired up with their, they decided that they were going to start an energy conservation program in their class. And then it spread to the school, and of course, they put together a whole plan, and one of the things that they absolutely loved about this was they got to tell off all their teachers all the time. They got to tell them to turn off the computers, turn off the lights. That was fabulous. And they got the whole school involved in this, and pretty soon they got to tell the school board about it, and pretty soon the school board was telling other schools to get involved, and then the school board hired somebody to write proposals so they could put solar panels on the schools. This was all from the kids getting excited in their classroom. It's incredible the power that these kids have. The teacher also had them doing public service announcements, and here you had this quote from the kid that basically normally really wouldn't give a hoot, and was really caring because, this is Facebook generation we're dealing with, we were going to put the best of these PSAs up online for the world to see. So he was going to really put his best foot forward. But this is the world we're dealing in today in our classrooms. Our schools behave like they're like these shut-off little worlds where, in fact, our kids are so involved all day long with the outside world. And so our schools need to be involved with the outside world just to compete with their attention. Of course, it's ironic that as schools are generally losing more and more of their sports activities, we're now discovering that even a small amount of physical activity can have huge effects on the way the kids learn. Literally changes their ability to absorb information. There have been some fantastic scientific studies done on this. So kids need to move. Learning is about activity. Learning is about getting your hands involved. We're wired to do. Now, this is one of the athletes that I work with on this program, Natalie Spilger, who's a professional soccer player. And she told me a fabulous story while I was writing the book about how she became a soccer player. And she had always wanted to be a pro soccer player since she was a young child. And she trained like crazy. She worked harder than anybody else. She was out there training before everybody else. She trained after everybody else had left the field. And she could not get drafted as a pro soccer player. So she gave up for about 2 years. And then one day she was sitting on the couch and she's watching the TV. And on comes the World Cup, and she's watching Brazil. And she suddenly remembers how much she loved the game. She loved the game. So she decided to pick it up, just for the love of the game. And within a year, she was a pro player. It's that love, and it's also been shown that the winningest athletes are those athletes that play for the sheer love of the game, not to win. That doesn't mean to say we don't do metrics. That doesn't mean to say that these teachers that are doing projects in their classrooms with their kids don't actually make sure that the kids are learning what they want them to learn. But loving to learn, that's what we need to be doing in our classrooms. There's this other athlete, Greg Hawkinsmith, who's in Tucson, who has this incredible story about being at the age of 16 and being paralyzed from above the waist down, and then becoming a pro hand cyclist and a world champion hand cyclist, a Paralympian. And I had him at a school with 600 middle school kids who were silent the entire hour that he was speaking about his life story. And he has this great phrase that he uses, which is, when the defining moment comes, you define the moment. What does he mean by that? Well, of course, for him, it was when he got into this terrible accident. He went on to then make something of his life. But it was also, as he explains, that he doesn't win every one of his races. If winning is what you're trying to do, then he fails most of the time. He only wins about 5% of his races. But he doesn't define himself by those failures. He defines himself by the wins. And the unfortunate thing is that in our schools, we're teaching our kids to define themselves by their failures because we test them. And that's no way to get innovation. That's no way to get creativity. It's no way to advance America. And of course, all of this is about the teachers. If it wasn't for the incredible teachers that I've had the opportunity to work with this last year, these kids wouldn't be inspired to do everything that they do. You know, it amazes me to think that these teachers have more touch time with our kids than just about anybody. They are creating the future of America. They're creating our future leaders. And we don't behave like that. We don't behave like our teachers are creating our future. There was an amazing teacher that I got to work with this last year called Corinne Bloom. She's a reading teacher. And she got her kids to get up 2 grade levels in 1 year while she was teaching them how to do a lot of hands-on projects in her classroom. So the kids were learning without even knowing that they were really learning how to read. And she got the kids to do some public service announcements. And the kids put these public service announcements up all around the school. The kids heard about, just simple things like recycling, but things that really meant something to them, things that felt like they were making a change in their own lives. So it was about, recycling and conservation and things like that. And pretty soon, the teacher's getting calls from parents at home going, "What is going on? I've never seen my child so fired up. She's getting us recycling. She's going out around in the community and getting the community to recycle and conserve energy." And she was getting calls from lots of parents who were just astounded at how engaged these kids were. And it was an incredibly heartwarming story. It is just really amazing to me, the power of these youth. And just imagine for a moment if every one of our classrooms across America inspired our children in the way that these few teachers have inspired their children, the champions for change that they are creating. Imagine for a moment the extraordinary future for all these children and for America. Thank you.